Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of the Rocker Dog Podcast, the only podcast that celebrates the canine companions of our favorite music artists. I'm your de facto host, Tim Dill, since my dog Charlie can't speak proper English, and today we have the pleasure of talking with singer-songwriter Heather Nova. Heather just released a new single earlier this month called Hey Poseidon, and this is her empathetic rocker dog.
We're speaking about Jack. He's a mixed breed. His name originally was, we called him Jack White after the artist because, if you've seen pictures of my Jack, but he's sort of all white with these black long ears, and we thought he looked a bit like Jack White.
I love it. Do you know what the mix of breeds are?
No. His mother was like a terrier mix, and his dad was a terrier mix, short-haired, and somehow he came out with this long, silky fur. We had his mother as well, and she was the Christmas present to my little boy. Well, he's not little anymore. He's 20 and he's 6'4". But when he was 5, because our dog had sadly passed away, and my son was we all were, but he was just so attached to our dog before, who was called Friday. So a few months later, we got him this little puppy for Christmas, whose name ended up being Christmas. Then 2 years later, we let her have puppies. And so my son was there at the birth, and one of the puppies was Jack. So we kept Jack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that begs the question, do you purposely, this dog seems to have a lot of teaching moments for your son. Was that purposeful at times?
Well, no, I just think that having an animal as a child is such an important thing. It teaches you compassion and empathy and just caring for another being. And I think my son is such a kind person. And I really attribute part of that to having dogs and being there looking after the puppies from the day they were born. And yeah, I think it's really and it's such a beautiful relationship. My son is an only child, and I think he really thought of the dogs as his siblings.
Mm-hmm. And let's learn a little bit more about Jack personality-wise. Was he much like Christmas, his mother?
Well, she was the alpha. So it was interesting because she would always eat her dinner first, for example, and he would stand back. He very much he was submissive to her, but they're very similar in the sense that they're very gentle. She passed away a few years ago. They are both very gentle, but very fierce watchdogs. But most of all, the lovely attribute of just being so tuned in to people, so tuned into their people, and just very loving and smart. I'm a big fan of mixed breeds because I think they're super smart and healthy and special. And I love rescuing dogs when I can.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you use the word tuned in, because I always tend to go towards this question of, are they beneficial to your mental health? Which I'm alluding to now, but just I was going to put in the context of lately, I've had these conversations on this show about how empathetic they are, and each guest is using that word empathetic and tuned in and intuitive. And do you find that same thing, that they do they can feed off you, or they can kind of bring you relief when you're not feeling your best?
I think they're called man's best friend for a really good reason, because I think they're so tuned in to our emotions and so good at getting right through to what's really going on. And I just find that I appreciate that in my dog so much that I think he's reading me all the time. I see him watch me and sort of not just reading my expression, but what's below the expression, the emotion that I'm in. And when each time I've had a dog that has died, and it's so devastating. I think people who aren't dog people don't really get it, but I think about how that relationship existed without ever exchanging. We speak to them, but without them ever speaking directly to us. But we had this amazing communication for a whole lifetime. We had this understanding and this depth of an emotional connection without words. And it's just so unique and so very special.
Yeah. It's funny that makes me think of, and I'll point it out to you in a minute. So many of my guests post on their social media how much they miss their dogs when they're out on tour. And it's always at the expense. I've asked one time, like, does your family ever get upset? But the best answer I've heard was, well, I can tell my family I miss them. I can tell my son I miss them. I can tell my dog, but he's not necessarily going to understand. The dog really has to be present to kind of feed off that energy.
And that's one of the most heartbreaking things is when I am going away, when I'm leaving, I wish I could explain to him that I'll be thinking of him every day, that I am coming back, but he sees the suitcase and you just see the sadness and they don't know, right? They don't know if you're going out the door and never coming back or going out the door and coming back in an hour and that's so hard not to be able to text my dog.
Yeah. Do you ever FaceTime with your dog?
Yeah, when because I have a house sitter and I try, but I don't think he really gets I don't think he really gets the connects
Yeah.
the on the thing.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, we're talking about it. Let's go there. You did mention the suitcase. Does he show signs of depression or ever act out when the suitcase busts out?
yeah. I don't know about depression, but he's sad. I can tell he's anxious and sad. So it's been really important for me to find people to house sit that he really loves, that people that are super kind and that he has a good relationship with. So that, I've thought about, oh, maybe I could take him with me. It's a tour bus. He'd love it. But I think that the stress of traveling for him would be too much. And I'd be so worried all the time because he's not used to traffic or cities. I
Yeah.
live on a little island in Bermuda and he's just in nature all the time. And I think that it's kinder to him to leave him here with kind people.
Yeah. Is he an independent spirit or is he kind of a shadow dog, Velcro dog?
Yeah, he's pretty attached to me. He's with me whatever room I'm in. It's interesting. I've had male dogs and female dogs, and I find in general, and maybe it's just too much of a generalization, but I find that the male dogs are more attached. The
Hmm.
female dogs seem more independent. He's
Yeah.
like, I would say he's like the most soulmatey dog I've ever had. Like yeah. And he's already 13, which is hard to think about, but he's super healthy and so that's good.
Well, he sounds active. You were just mentioning how you guys went kayaking this
Yeah,
morning. What else does he do? Does he hike? Do you take him everywhere? Do you take him just to the grocery store if it's just
I
a short
don't.
trip?
I don't. So I live on this little tiny island and he has free run, which is great. So I never feel like I don't take him for a walk every day because he doesn't need that. He just runs
Mhm.
around. But he loves going in the boat. He loves going in the kayak. But he hates the water, funnily enough. He will not swim. He won't even put his feet in the water.
Does he find trouble?
No, but oh yes, what am I talking about? There was a few years ago where there's another island that's kind of connected at low tide. And I found out he and Christmas were running across at low tide and attacking their chickens. And I didn't know that until I got this hysterical call from my neighbor saying, your dog has killed my chicken and it's dying in my arms. And, they threatened to take us to court and all this stuff. So we had to put some fencing up. But yeah, so he is a rascal sometimes. The good thing is he's a rat catcher. I've seen him in
Mm.
action, and he just goes right in one time and just breaks their
Yikes.
neck.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, as an artist, I often ask how he kind of fits into your world. It sounds like by your description where you live, do you do local gigs? Will he ever be at a gig or do you ever take him to the studio?
I wouldn't take him to a gig because I think the sound would hurt his ears. But what I do find fascinating is whenever I sit and write, he will come and if I sing and play the guitar, he will come and sit right next to me. Like
Hmm.
he loves music. He loves when I sing, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a post where he kind of puts himself between, the hand you have on the neck in your
Yeah.
lap, poking his head
Yeah,
out,
exactly.
which I think could be a little in the way sometimes, but it's very sweet that he kind of
Yeah.
appreciates what's going on in the moment.
Yeah, for sure. But other than that, no, I don't really my gigs take place overseas mostly, so and the same with studio. So he just gets to hear me sing acoustically at home.
Okay. And besides music, are also active as an artist, and you did
Mhm.
have a post back in 2016 that was a charcoal drawing, and it looked like either a woman hugging a dog or kind of intertwined with a dog. And
Yeah.
I guess this goes back to being a dog person. Like, what is it about a dog that resonates with you that, you want this closeness to?
Well, I've had this real connection to the natural world my whole life, and it's kind of what drives me creatively a lot of the time. It's where I derive a lot of my inspiration is just being in nature and feeling that connection to our own animal part, our
Hmm.
own sort of primal part of being a creature on the earth and getting away from all the stuff that takes us away from that. That's why I moved from London many years ago, where I was living back home to Bermuda to be more connected to nature. And dogs they're that direct link for me
Right.
because there is a kind of an overlap. I mean, I think dogs, because they've been domesticated for so long, so they have, they're not wild animals, but they still link us to the animal world and to nature, and their senses are so finely tuned to just everything outside. And I appreciate it, and I through my artwork as well as my music, I'm always exploring that relationship to the
Hmm.
natural world.
Well, and going back history-wise with dogs, you did mention kind of the dogs within your current family. You
Mm.
were raised in Bermuda, correct?
Mm.
What was childhood like there? Did you have dogs that you remembered? Or I know there was a certain time that you lived on a boat. I don't know if that was like 300 days or like, what do you
Yeah.
remember? What's kind of your formative years with dogs like?
So I had a dog from age 2. So we always had dogs. And then when we moved on the boat, I was 10. And at one point we got a little dog. So the dog had like a little house on the deck, like a little tiny dog house that she lived in. And so she went to sea and, was just a constant companion on the boat. And then there was a long period of time when I lived in London, didn't have an animal at all. And then
Yeah.
came back home and got a rescue dog from the SPCA here, which is a rare thing because normally there's just pit bulls, and I didn't want a pit bull. So there was this puppy right when I moved back here in 2002, and he was an amazing dog. And because I lived on this little island, I called him Friday, like Robinson Crusoe. And he was like a cross between, I think, a cattle dog, an Australian cattle dog. He had those markings, and maybe a Rottweiler. He was a big dog, like a 90-pound dog. And he was so smart. I remember I thought I'm going to teach him something. So I taught him get my hat, right? Because whenever I go outside, I wear a big straw hat. And so I would say, get my hat. And he'd go wherever it was in the house. He'd find it. He'd bring it to me. And then this one day, he couldn't find my hat. And he brought me, like, there was a baseball cap lying around. He brought me the baseball cap. And I was like, oh my God,
Wow.
that shows so much intelligence because it's not just this object. He gets the concept.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And but he was an amazing dog. So when I was pregnant shortly after that, people said, "Oh, gonna have to be really careful with your dog because they'll be jealous. They'll try to like, they might threaten the baby. It might be dangerous." And when I brought the baby back from the hospital, he was so curious, but just was so protective of
Yeah.
my son from day one and would let him sort of sit on him and pull his ear. He was just like this gentle, gentle soul with my son. So he was a very special part of our family. And actually, it was very sad because he died the day we were getting back from tour. So we were literally flying home. And while we were in the air, he died. He got this thing that large dogs get, sometimes called bloat, where their stomachs twist. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that was devastating because we'd been on a long tour. We were coming home, and my little boy was so excited to see Friday, and then we got home and he was gone. Yeah, he was really smart.
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as you mentioned cattle dog, those are, I mean, there's so many of the breeds get credit for being smart. And it was a cattle dog mixed with a Rottweiler, did you say?
I mean, I guess he was a shelter, a rescue dog, so
Yeah,
nobody really
yeah,
knows, but he was big enough to probably be mixed and square jaw, like maybe a Rottweiler or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Was he high energy?
He was, and he had real separation anxiety, which was difficult because if we would go ashore, he would try, and he did like the water, so he would swim after the boat every time. It was
Oh my God.
we had to like contain him in a little yard when we would go ashore.
That's too funny. Now, here in the States, we have an issue with Fourth of July and fireworks.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, I just made the correlation to some of the posts I read about, you know, and I see you guys putting wood up in front of the windows is hurricanes. How do your
Mhm.
animals fare during hurricanes? Do they show outward signs of any stress or do they roll with it?
Well, the thing with hurricanes is the barometric pressure drops really low, right? So it kind of makes you feel sort of sleepy. He just stays by my side and he's okay, but when it comes to thunderstorms, he's terrified. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's
And
I
has that
guess
been,
like the fireworks.
yeah, has that been true with the other, with like Friday or Christmas?
Yeah. Yeah, they've all been scared. I don't know if it's true for all dogs, but my
Okay.
dogs are. So
Yeah, I've
I call
been,
it the thunder monster and I tell him it's okay, the thunder monster's not gonna get you.
it's just like a child. I love it.
I know.
Yeah, I've been blessed with a dog that could care less if it's, you know, if the
Oh,
Armageddon's coming.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's a rarity.
Yeah. What
Well,
kind of dog do you have?
it's a golden doodle,
Okay.
so the fashionable dog of the era, but he's a good boy. He's overseeing me right now.
Yeah.
Well, I wind up all the shows with what I call the zoomies, and that's just five fast, mostly frivolous questions. The first
Okay.
question is the frivolousest of them all, and that's do you kiss your dogs on the mouth?
No. I kiss him on the face, but not on the mouth. My dog's also not a licker, like which I kind of like. He's the kind of dog who comes and just sort of puts his head on you and rests his head, but he doesn't like he's not a licky dog.
Yeah, he doesn't slobber on you. That's an attribute. Question two is does Jack have a theme song? Given his name, maybe?
So
Does
I
he,
make up songs for
or,
him every day. I mean, just silly nonsense songs. Does he have a theme song? No.
okay,
I'm a songwriter, so I just create songs all the time for him.
okay. So when he walks in the room, you can't imagine what his like red carpet music would be.
No, but I definitely have a silly voice that I use with him.
We'll get to that. That's one question away. Question three is hypothetically, if he did come on tour with you, what would he want on his tour rider?
Oh, he would want chicken for sure.
Live chicken or
Yeah, probably. So a chicken to chase around during sound check, that would be ideal.
I love that story. Question four was the dog voice. Do you have, and it's kind of two parts. Do you use a dog voice, like that high-pitched, cutesy voice, to speak to him?
I don't even know if I can do it without doing it to him. I'll try.
Okay. And part two is, do you give him a voice as if, you know, what would come out of this cute face? What would it sound like?
Oh no, I don't do that.
Okay.
I don't imagine he just speaks to me with his eyes. I feel like hang on one second. Jack, come here.
Oh,
Here.
there he is.
Yeah. Okay, little Poodle. See, I talk in this little voice to him because he's the cutest in the whole wide world.
Will you use that voice in front of company as well?
Probably without realizing it.
Okay, good. Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah.
And question five is I always ask if there's a dog service or an organization that you want to give a shout out to, and that could be anything from a shelter or a walker or a groomer, anything and all.
You know what? I really appreciate these dog rescue people. And there's this one organization in St. Lucia. And because there's so many strays in the Caribbean, I spent a lot of time as a kid sailing in the Caribbean. And so I know the islands pretty well. And these dogs, a lot of them aren't treated well, or they'll just be abandoned, a litter of puppies. So there's this organization called Help Paws in St.
Okay.
Lucia. And a friend of mine in Toronto has one of their rescues because they send them up to Canada and stuff to rehome them. So I think they're fantastic
Oh,
people.
great. Great.
Yeah.
I'll look up their information. I'll post it with the show notes so everyone can learn more about it.
Yeah.
So I've noticed in your social feed you were just recording in the spring, it seemed. What's going to be the result of that?
I just made a new album. So that's going to be announced very soon and probably released, singles probably released in October and album to come.
Okay.
And
And is
doing,
there anything kind of holding it together theme-wise or tone-wise?
I mean, I feel like I explore the same themes over and over in my music because I feel like there are patterns and themes that we repeat in our lives until we figure out how to heal them. And so for me, a lot of it is often love, longing, loss, and how to make sense of all of that. So
Okay.
that's what comes back in my music.
All right. Well, we look forward to hearing it and seeing it if you tend to tour the world. And
Mhm.
yeah, good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for giving me your time. It's always a
It's
pleasure
great
meeting you
talking to you.
as an artist over Zoom and seeing the dogs and learning about them. So thank you.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.